Explore the unseen.
You know, if you ask people what really makes for a happy, fulfilling life, strong relationships are almost always like right there at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just opinion, right? That's backed by tons of research.
Absolutely.
But even the best connections, well, they can feel challenging sometimes, can't they?
Yeah.
Life gets busy, you fall into patterns, and maybe you realize you're feeling a bit disconnected.
Definitely. It's so easy for things to shift from, intentionally connecting to just kind of coexisting, managing the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And with all the advice floating around, figuring out how to actually strengthen that bond, it can feel pretty overwhelming.
Totally. So for this deep dive, you've gathered this fantastic set of sources. Of course, we've got rigorous research articles, some really practical therapy guides, even some insightful lifestyle pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all focused on one big question. What are the most effective, practical ways you can nurture and strengthen your romantic relationship like right now?
Exactly. And our mission today is really to cut through all that noise. We've sort of distilled these sources down to find the core insights, the strategies you can actually use.
Yeah.
And maybe even a few surprising things that can give you a bit of a shortcut to fostering a stronger, happier connection.
Yeah.
Think of it as pulling out the essential toolkit.
Love it. We're going to dig into everything from like fundamental communication shifts that science backs up
Right.
to the surprising power of just sharing simple activities and even what cooking together can teach us about connection and mindfulness.
It's a pretty wide lens, yeah, but all focused on that central relationship.
Okay, let's unpack this then.
Yeah.
So many sources point to communication as, well, the foundation, but also often where the problems pop up.
That's right.
So what are the absolute must-have skills the sources agree on? The things that can genuinely be a game changer?
Okay, one that comes up constantly isn't just about talking, it's about truly listening. Active, mindful listening. Really aiming to understand your partner's point of view without jumping in, without planning your comeback while they're still talking.
That sounds simple, but it's hard in practice sometimes.
It really is. But that simple act of giving your full attention, it's powerful. It shows respect. And to make sure you're actually getting what they mean, asking clarifying questions is so important.
Like what?
Oh, something simple, like, would you mind telling me a bit more about that? Or, okay, so if I'm hearing you right, you're saying.
Ah, okay.
That kind of engaged listening, plus, authentic, thoughtful responses, that really builds that feeling of being heard and valued.
Makes sense. And then shifting from listening to speaking,
Yeah.
the sources really push for using I statements
Yeah.
instead of, blaming language.
Big one.
It seems straightforward, but why is that shift so critical?
Well, it's because I statements keep the focus on your experience, your feelings about a situation. It's not about judging or blaming your partner.
Right.
So instead of starting with "you always," which, let's be honest, immediately makes someone defensive.
Totally. Walls go up.
Exactly. You start with, "I feel emotion when this specific thing happens." It just invites a conversation, not a fight. The sources have a great example. Switching from "you're always late" to something more like, "I appreciate it when you're on time because it helps me feel more relaxed about our plans." See, it focuses on the positive outcome and your feeling, not attacking their character.
Yeah, that's much less accusatory.
Okay.
And building on that, there's this idea of what I need statements that also gets highlighted.
Right. This is about being really clear and actionable about your needs. The format they suggest is simple but effective. What I need is the specific action when this specific situation happens.
Okay.
And they suggest practicing this not just for the big stuff, but for small, everyday things, too.
No, here's
Like, what I need is a hug when I've had a tough day, or maybe what I need is for us to decide on dinner by 6 p.m. so I don't feel rushed.
Yeah.
Practicing with the small things builds that muscle for when the stakes feel higher,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of building positive muscles, expressing gratitude gets a lot of airtime in the sources. It sounds basic, but why is specific appreciation such a game changer?
Because it actively strengthens those positive feelings in the relationship. It helps you both actually notice the good things that might just get overlooked otherwise.
Right, the little things.
Exactly. Recommendations range from, like, sharing 3 things you appreciate daily about your partner to maybe writing little notes once a week. But the key is being specific.
So not just thanks.
Right. Instead of a generic thanks, say something like, "I was really grateful you took the time to listen to me vent about work this morning." That detail. It just lands much more powerfully.
Okay, so those are some really solid communication skills. But the sources also talk about making intentional time for connection outside of talking about problems. How do we actually create that space?
Yeah, this is vital. Scheduling regular relationship check-ins is highly recommended. Maybe monthly, maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly, whatever works for you. But the crucial guideline here, this time is specifically not for hashing out conflicts or solving problems.
Oh, okay. So what is it for?
It's just for checking in. How are you feeling? What's going well in your world? What feels challenging for you individually right now? It can be super informal, or you could use prompts, maybe even journaling prompts. It's just about creating that dedicated space for, like, emotional updates.
Gotcha. And there was one specific technique for daily connection that caught my eye. This end-of-day reunion thing. Sounds simple, but the structure was interesting.
It is interesting. The suggestion is basically setting aside around 30 minutes each day, maybe 15 minutes for each person to share about their day without interruption.
15 minutes each, uninterrupted. Okay.
Yeah, and the guidelines are key here. Just listen. Don't offer advice unless they specifically ask for it. Use those active listening cues we talked about, nodding, eye contact, little Keep your own sharing relatively brief, focused on feelings or experiences.
Okay. And the most surprising guideline in there, the advice to take your partner's side. What's that about?
Yes. Okay, so even if you don't actually agree with their take on something that happened outside the relationship, maybe their boss wasn't being unreasonable, or maybe they did mishandle something with a friend.
Right.
The sources really emphasize that your role in that moment is to be their partner, their ally. Validate their feelings.
So say things like,
wow, I can totally see why you felt that way. Or, oh, that sounds really frustrating. I would have been upset too. It's not about agreeing with the facts of the external situation. It's about showing empathy and building that sense of us, us against the world, kind of.
That's a real shift.
It is. And during this time, being physically affectionate, holding hands, a quick hug, saying I love you, that just reinforces the closeness.
Wow, okay. That definitely flips the script on a lot of typical end-of-day conversations.
Yeah.
Right, so we're building positive connection using these communication tools, but conflict is going to happen, right? It's inevitable.
Oh, absolutely. Conflict is a normal part of any close relationship. The key isn't avoiding it. It's learning how to manage it, how to resolve it in a way that doesn't, damage the connection.
Right.
Sources point out common triggers, money, values, unmet needs, that kind of thing. And also the unhealthy patterns to watch out for, like complaining, criticizing, blaming.
Stonewalling.
Yeah, stonewalling, just completely shutting down and withdrawing, or always being defensive. Those are red flags for how conflict is handled.
So how do you approach a disagreement from a healthier place then?
Well, having some ground rules is essential. Before you even bring something up, the sources suggest asking yourself, okay, is this really worth making an issue of?
Good filter.
Yeah. And maybe try to think of a potential positive solution beforehand. Then, when you do decide to talk, find a time that works for both of you. And critically, either person should feel okay saying, you know what, now isn't a good time, as long as they suggest another time soon.
Okay. And the way you approach it matters too, right? The tone.
Oh, hugely. Starting with respect, with gentleness. Paying attention to your body language, trying to stay calm, having open posture.
Yeah.
And if things start getting too heated, and they might, the sources are really clear, take a break.
Okay. How long?
Even just 15 or 20 minutes can make a massive difference. Or, for really intense arguments, maybe even up to 24 hours.
And during that break, you're not supposed to just stew on it, are you? Like, plan your counterattack.
No, exactly. That defeats the purpose. The break is for emotional regulation, for calming your nervous system.
So do you what?
Use the time for self-soothing. Read something. Listen to music. Go for a walk. The goal is to calm down, not to rehearse your next point.
Okay. Then, when you come back together, after the break.
Try to approach it with a softer tone, maybe a more curious one. Take strict turns talking and listening, no interrupting. Keep using those I statements we talked about.
Right.
And importantly, use what they call repair attempts.
Repair attempts.
Yeah, they're like little gestures or phrases that kind of pull you back towards connection, saying, I hear you, or okay, I understand. Offering a genuine apology, maybe using a bit of appropriate humor if the mood allows, or even just reaching out for a hand.
Okay.
These attempts signal you're trying to fix the process, not just win the argument.
It sounds like empathy is just woven through all of this conflict stuff, too.
It really is. Trying to understand your partner's feelings, even if you disagree with them, even if you're feeling hurt yourself, it doesn't mean your own feelings aren't valid.
Right.
It just helps you see the situation from their perspective, which is, crucial for finding a way forward together.
And forgiveness.
Yeah, the sources highlight that too. After hurts happen, the process of seeking and granting forgiveness is really significant for healing and reconnecting. Recognizing, of course, that forgiveness doesn't mean condoning the behavior, and sometimes it takes time.
Makes sense. And what about nonverbal cues? Body
Yeah.
language and stuff.
Oh, definitely important. Paying attention to your partner's body language, their tone of voice, facial expressions, and being aware of your own can reveal underlying feelings that maybe the words aren't capturing. It helps avoid misinterpretations during those difficult conversations. The sources also mention challenging faulty assumptions.
Faulty assumptions.
Yeah, those stories we sometimes tell ourselves about why our partner did something or what they must be thinking. Often those assumptions are just wrong.
Yeah, I can see that.
And they create unnecessary distance or conflict. So recognizing them, asking for clarification instead of assuming and maybe offering some validation, like, okay, I can see why you might assume that, but actually, that's a really powerful step too.
Wow, okay. That's a really comprehensive toolkit just for navigating communication and conflict. But, relationships aren't only about talking when there are problems. What about just connecting through shared experiences?
Right. This is where we shift gears a bit from managing the challenges to actively building the positive stuff. And the sources really emphasize this. Shared experiences build closeness, they build unity, a sense of continuity, they create your shared history together, and they're just fundamentally important for overall happiness and well-being across the whole life of the relationship.
So beyond just sitting on the couch watching TV together, what kind of shared experiences are we talking about?
Well, one really unique idea that came up was something called collaborative legacy writing.
Legacy writing.
Yeah, like actually sitting down together to write about your shared history, your values, key moments, important experiences. It's a way to really deepen that mutual understanding and create a narrative of your journey together.
Wow, that sounds incredibly meaningful. Maybe a bit intense for a Tuesday night, though. What about something a little more fun?
Absolutely. Scheduling regular dates is highly recommended. Some sources even suggest aiming for at least 3 hours of dedicated date time regularly.
3 hours, okay. Doing what?
Oh, the ideas are all over the place. Exploring a new neighborhood or even just playing tourist in your own city, seeing it with fresh eyes.
That could be fun.
Or creating a relationship playlist together. Drafting a travel bucket list, tackling some kind of shared challenge like a fitness goal, or learning a new skill side by side. Even simple stuff.
And I saw mentions of things like trust falls, like physical activities to build trust.
Yeah, variations on that idea. Those kinds of activities can actually build both physical and emotional trust in surprising ways.
Interesting.
And bringing it back to physical connection, things like giving each other a partner massage are suggested, not just for relaxation, but for that physical closeness, and also for opening up communication about, preferences and comfort levels.
Right.
Affectionate touch in general is just highlighted as so vital for deepening connection. It ties right back to that end-of-day reunion ritual we talked about earlier.
Okay. This all makes a lot of intuitive sense. Communication skills, making time, shared activities. But there was one area the sources highlighted as surprisingly effective that felt a little, out of left field for relationship advice. Cooking.
Ah, yes. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Several sources point to cooking or baking together as this, surprisingly potent activity for building the relationship.
Really?
Cooking, yeah. It's not just about the food you end up with, it's about the process.
How so? What are the actual relationship benefits they found?
Well, they find that cooking together can really align couples around shared goals. Working together towards something tangible, a delicious meal. It fosters teamwork, a sense of unity, and that shared pride in what you created.
Okay, I can see the teamwork part.
But it can also genuinely reignite romance. It creates a space for intimacy, for chemistry, flirtation, playfulness right there in the kitchen.
Okay.
Think about it. Affectionate glances while you're chopping vegetables, some playful banter, maybe even a spontaneous makeout session by the fridge.
Huh? Okay, maybe.
It just creates a fun, bonding atmosphere that's different from sitting in front of screens or doing regular chores.
That is a vivid picture. Any practical tips from the sources for making this cooking thing work well as a relationship activity? not just ending in arguments about who cleans up.
Yeah. Yes, planning the recipe together is a good start. Dividing tasks based on what each person is good at or what they prefer doing. Maybe taking turns being the head chef or the lead on different dishes.
Right. Collaboration.
Exactly. Ways to make it feel collaborative and reduce potential friction.
And the sources even gave some pretty mouth-watering examples of recipes to try, didn't they?
They did. Things like classic comfort food, chicken marsala, mushroom risotto, or maybe something a bit more elegant like lemon butter scallops.
Nice.
Or a flavorful main like pork tenderloin with apple cider glaze. Exploring different cuisines together through cooking was also mentioned as a great way to bring new experiences right into your home.
Okay, I'm getting hungry now.
Yeah.
But beyond the direct relationship benefits, the sources make this strong connection between cooking and mindfulness. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a really cool link. Cooking is just inherently sensory, isn't it? It engages sight, sound, touch, smell, taste.
True.
And it requires focus, concentration. You have to measure, chop, stir, time things correctly. That active engagement in the present moment, that's basically practicing mindfulness. It helps you stay grounded, not get lost in worries or distractions.
And being present like that probably helps lower stress, boosts your mood,
Right.
which obviously spills over into the relationship itself.
Exactly. The sources also note that cooking, especially when you have to adapt a recipe or deal with something unexpected, like running out of an ingredient.
Happens all the time.
Right. It enhances creativity because you have to improvise, problem solve. And specifically with baking, there was a note about how it can be a good opportunity to practice self-compassion and letting go of perfectionism.
Because baking can be tricky.
It can. Results can vary, and that's okay. It's about enjoying the process, not just stressing about a flawless end product.
And the broader link is that mindfulness, it's just the practice of being present, is tied to better relationship quality overall, like more empathy, more acceptance.
That's what the research suggests. So cooking mindfully together can actually have these ripple effects on your connection in general.
It's fascinating how something seemingly simple like cooking can tap into these deeper principles of connection and well-being.
It really is. And speaking of deeper principles, everything we've talked about today, the communication tools, the shared activities, the kitchen connection, it all kind of ties back into the bigger picture that relationship science and positive psychology give us.
Positive psychology. For anyone not familiar, what's the core idea there, basically?
Well, positive psychology is basically the scientific study of human flourishing, what helps people and communities thrive. Instead of only focusing on what's wrong, it looks at strengths, at well-being, at the factors that make life meaningful. And one of the most powerful, most consistent findings across study after study in this field is that the quality of our social relationships, especially our close relationships, like marriage, is the single strongest predictor of overall happiness and well-being.
Wow. The strongest predictor.
Yeah. They often use the phrase, other people matter. It really underscores how central relationships are.
So it's not just a nice feeling. There's hard data showing how crucial our connections are for our personal happiness.
Precisely. And relationship science helps us understand the principles of how relationships actually function, what individuals bring to them, how context matters. They're fundamentally interdependent, dynamic, always evolving.
Right.
And the science highlights that while, yes, managing conflict effectively is necessary, actively building the positive aspects of the relationship is equally, maybe even more, crucial for long-term thriving.
Okay, like what does building the positive look like in action, according to the sources?
Well, two key concepts really stood out. One is called mutual responsiveness.
Mutual responsiveness.
Yeah, it's about partners being genuinely aware of, sensitive to, and supportive of each other's needs, goals, values. It's that feeling of being truly seen and cared for.
Okay, that makes sense. And the other?
The other is capitalization.
Capitalization, like investing.
Sort of. It's the positive experience you get when you share your personal good news with your partner and they respond with genuine pleasure, enthusiasm, and support.
So it's not just being there for the bad stuff, but actively celebrating the good stuff together.
Exactly. It really amplifies the positive events in your life and strengthens the bond. The sources also mention relationship maintenance mechanisms.
Okay.
Things committed partners tend to do, like holding positive illusions, seeing their partner and the relationship in a generally favorable, maybe slightly idealized light.
The rose-tinted glasses.
A little bit, yeah, but in a healthy way. Also, making sacrifices for each other and practicing forgiveness after hurts. And importantly, continuing to engage in novel and arousing activities together. That helps keep the spark alive over the long haul.
Wow. Okay. We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We really have. We started by grounding ourselves in, the fundamental importance of communication, those practical strategies for talking and listening and navigating conflict more constructively.
Right.
Then we explored the power of intentional connection time and sharing experiences to build that closeness and positive history.
Oh.
We uncovered the surprisingly potent role of cooking together, linking it to teamwork, romance, even mindfulness.
Yeah, the pricking part was cool.
And finally, we kind of connected it all back to the bigger picture insights from relationship science and positive psychology, really underscoring why nurturing these connections is just so fundamental to a happy life.
This deep dive has seriously pulled out a wealth of actionable strategies and perspectives straight from the sources. It's like a real toolkit for intentional connection and growth. It's fascinating how these different pieces, from I statements to a partner massage to making chicken marsala, they all feed into the same goal, don't they?
It really shows how many different entry points there are to investing in your relationship, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be some massive overhaul. It can just be picking one small thing to focus on.
Absolutely. So think about everything we've